There's a bit of setup needed in order to work with client funds. And the first part is in matter setup. We need to define that we want to use a global dimension as our matter dimension. That is a hard requirement. In my environment, I've set up global dimension 2 as a matter dimension. So looking at dimensions, in here, we can see I have a dimension that I call matter, and that is then applied to every matter, which means that every time I create a new matter, the global dimension 2 value on that matter will be the matter number, and we use that later for filtering our client funds. Let's create a new matter. I'll call this CF1. This will be our first matter for testing client funds. I'll select a client, take one from the list, put on a matter responsible, doesn't really matter here. And we can see that the matter code is blanked out because this will be filled in by the matter number that we're generating. So we cannot fill that in ourselves. Then when I get the matter, I will see on the matter, if I look at the dimensions, that I automatically have the matter dimension as the same as the project number up here. So this is a prerequisite for this to work in the standard way where we connect the client funds to a matter. Now, there are other ways to do it where you could connect it to the client, but I'll look at it from the matter perspective. This also means that on the matter card, we have a section down here for client funds. And this automatically populates with a client funds dimension 2 filter being the matter number, which basically means that as we post client funds, as long as they are tagged with this matter dimension, then they will come back and be applied to this matter. There are also options to specify a specific client funds account if you want to limit this to only be used for certain accounts. But in most cases, we just leave this blank and solely rely on the funds dimension 2 filter instead. For this matter, let me try to post some client funds. For that, I will use the general journal, and I'll create a line in my general journal for, on one side, a bank account, and I have a general client funds bank account, and I put an amount in, let's say that's 2,000. And here the important part is that I have to put on my matter code. So I need to know that this is for the matter CF1, and that has a matter code project 25. Of course, I also need to balance this, so I'll put in a GL line for this as well. And in this small sample, I'll just take it out of cash, probably not real, but it doesn't matter for the scenario. What we are interested in is what is going into this client funds account. And this is a bank account. We can actually have a look at that bank account. Let's show the details of this, where we can see this is a bank account. And the special part is that it is marked as a client funds account. So we can use it for client funds. Other than that, it's a bank account as any other. Whether this is actually connected to a real bank account or this is just a layer on top. I mean, there could be one actual bank account, but multiple bank accounts in BC that utilize the same bank account. That's another question. But from our perspective, we use the bank account to hold those entries. So if I post this now, I should see that I now have a balance of 2,000 on the matter that I created. And here we have it. The balance is 2,000. We can even drill down and see the details. That is that ledger entry. Then you can, of course, make adjustments, post different entries, etc. back and forth. You can use that, but it's just a matter of us tracking ledger entries to a specific matter. We then have some reporting on top of it. So I can look up some of the client fund reports. And we have two. There is the bank statement for client funds, which is just a statement in here. There are some options if we want to have a new page per bank account, if we want to exclude those bank accounts that don't have any movement in the time period we're looking at, if we want to include reverse of entries. But in this case, I just want to see it as default. I can run it and then I get a statement. And it's similar to the bank statement, but we put in, for instance, a matter code so it's easy to see what matter it is related to. I also have a dedicated client funds account for one of my clients, and that's of course one of the options to use that field for the bank account number on the matter to only use a dedicated account for this. And the other report we provide is client funds report per client responsible. And here we can filter out on specific client responsibles, or we can do it for everybody. We need to put in a date filter. I'll put in a very limited date filter just for today, because that's when I posted the entry. We can put in a limit. The limit is used if you don't want to see accounts that hold very small amounts. So you can say, I only want to see what is in accounts with something in excess of a certain amount. Certain countries, there could be limits and say, we don't need to report on very small holdings. We can disregard those for reporting purposes. In this case, I'm leaving it blank, meaning I will see everything. And in this case, we see the one entry that I created for today. We see that this is for client responsible CASI. There was no limit on it. It's for the entries entered today. And again, we see here who is the client, what is the matter, etc. And this can, of course, be a quite long list of entries back and forth. What is happening with this? And you get a statement for it, but in a more aggregated way. This is a balance. So this is an aggregation. And if you have one client responsible who has multiple matters, etc., then it will be more of a tree structure where you see the different entries below. And that's what we have out of the box. I will mention again that you could turn this around, and instead of doing the matter dimension, you could do a client dimension. I get it, the automatic matter dimension on the project if I set up this global dimension for matters, but I could be going and be specific and say, I want to override the client fund setup. And instead of using this dimension, if I had my dimension 1 as a client dimension, then I could filter on that, and then it would be one common for all. But then you lose the detail of the matters. And in a lot of cases, you do have a matter dimension anyway, and you have the automatic process of setting up those matter dimensions when you create the matter. So it's an easy solution.